One of the ways that Jesus planned to grow his people is through his church. How many know that? When Peter gave a great profession of faith, what did Jesus say? He looked at him and says, "You are Peter, but I say upon this rock I will build my church." He planned to use the church to build up his people, to grow his people, to work through his people. And he can do a lot for our homes if we allow him to. There's a key word there. It's allow him to. How many know he won't do anything unless you allow him, unless you give him the permission to? But the church can only be as effective as the families allow it, as the homes allow it. In our story this morning, I better open this up. If your Bibles are opened up to Luke 19. Let's take a look at Zacchaeus. We see Zacchaeus discovered the difference that Jesus makes when he comes into the home. When he enters the life, he also enters the home. One thing that's important to understand here about this story, we see Zacchaeus, let's see here, verse 6, and he hurried and came down and received Jesus gladly. When they saw it, they all began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to the guest of a man who is a sinner." When they, who do you think they is? They is Pharisees. They is the church. They is those people. They is that correct? I'm not sure. They are. They are those people who think they have it together. They are those people in the church who think they have it right. They are those people who look down their noses at other people saying, "You're not as good as we are." That's who they are. And unfortunately, it is the church, it is generally the leadership of the church when we're looking at this with Jesus in the New Testament. And what does Jesus do? He goes to Zacchaeus' house and he has a meal. I've told this before. The culture, the custom then, and in a lot of ways today, is when you sit to have a meal with somebody, you're saying, "I accept you." You're saying, "I'm with you." And when you would sit then and have a meal with somebody and they saw that, the Pharisees saw that, they said, "Oh, he's approving, he's accepting, he's with Zacchaeus, this tax collector." How many know they don't like tax collectors in the New Testament? They don't, because they tend to pad their own pockets. They would take one for the government, two for me. One for the government, two for me. I need more fish from you. I need this. And so they did not like him. It really rocked the boat of the Pharisees when Jesus went to Matthew and said, "Follow me." Matthew was a tax collector. How many know Jesus, the gang of merry men that Jesus had, well, maybe not merry men, but anyway, was fisherman, tax collector. Whoa, that just blew their mind. And so on. So Jesus is sitting at the table with Zacchaeus. And one of the outstanding parts to this story, I see, is that Zacchaeus had a problem seeing Jesus. Why did he have a problem seeing Jesus? Because of the crowd. Well, and he was short. I can relate. Don't let my size fool you. I'm really not this tall. I'm on a stage. No. He had a problem seeing because of the crowd Jesus attracted. How many people know Jesus attracts a crowd? Jesus shows up, he attracts a crowd everywhere he went. And Zacchaeus took care of that problem by rising above the crowd in a sycamore tree. Now, if you're following along your notes, here we go. First principle is this. Principle 1, we often have trouble seeing Jesus because of the crowd around us. Think about that. Who you surround yourself with will determine how well you see Jesus. You want to soar like an eagle, you want to be up above everybody else, and you're walking with turkeys, guess what? You're just going to gobble like a turkey. That's all there is to it. You can't soar like an eagle and run with the turkeys. That's just how it is. And so often I see people who are followers of Jesus doing that. Hanging with them. And I've even had people say, "Well, I'm trying to evangelize." Really? But they're taking you down, they're taking you down, they're taking you down, and they're taking you down. So often, the crowd that we're with blocks our view of Jesus. The second principle here is this. if you want to see Jesus in your life, you have to take the first step. You have to take the first step of rising above the crowd that's around you. Don't expect somebody else to do it for you. How many times in the Bible do we see where the Lord makes sure that his people take the first step and then he steps in? The people are holding the Ark of the Covenant. They're coming with Joshua. They're coming to the river. And he says, put your foot in first. Before, the Lord just split the Red Sea. But now he says, put your foot in. They put their shoes, they put their feet in the water. What happened? It says it piled up. Anybody ever see water pile up? I tried to pile it up. It just doesn't work outside of a bucket. It just piled up on either side of them, and they walked across on dry ground. So many times God says, you go first. Why? Because he wants to know you're serious. He wants to know you're not just playing the game. He wants to know, and he wants to strengthen your faith in him. If you run with the crowd, you will be like the crowd. To rise above the crowd, you have to do extraordinary things to be above the crowd. Zacchaeus, he climbs the tree. He has to climb something. When I was in Israel, we went to Jericho. And I wanted to just take a walk around Jericho, but they wouldn't let us walk around it. They said that's been done before, and it's not a good thing. So they wouldn't let us walk around Jericho anymore. But anyway, they showed us a sycamore tree. And he said, this is the tree that Zacchaeus climbed. And I'm going, right. You know, I may be an American, but I'm not that slow, okay? But they did say the tree was several hundred years old. And it's just really cool. But it's just a nice thought to see this tree on a street corner, kind of fenced in now, that this place where this wee little man climbs the tree to get a sight of Jesus. You know, and it's interesting here what Jesus says about this. Verse 9. Today, salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. Jesus said that Zacchaeus' home was saved. Why? Because of the presence of Jesus in the home. When Jesus comes to our home, we're saved. We're saved. But in order for Jesus to help your family, he does it through his body, which is the church. It's a church that helps bring the presence of Jesus into the home. And there's 3 conditions, I believe, that are necessary if Jesus is going to help your home through the church. The first one is this. Christ can help your family through the church if your habits allow. If your habits allow it. I'm going to tell you up front, I don't know about this message, if it'll do anything for you, but I hope if you walk away here with just the first 2 principles, I'm good for that. But I'm not looking for stepping on any toes today, honestly. When I was writing this, I was stepping on my own. But I'm not looking to step on toes. I'm just looking to step on hearts. So you got to ask yourself about these questions. How are your habits? What are the habits you're cultivating in your life? You know, there's a way of living that makes it what the church offers, the lifestyle that we have that makes what the church offers available to the family. It's a lifestyle that Jesus works in. When there's a lifestyle in the home of worship, a lifestyle, a way of life that we have of studying the Bible, a lifestyle of spending time in the Word and prayer, then we have things like values and forgiveness and purpose. Become alive in those lifestyles. You can understand what it means to be a forgiving person if you're spending time with Jesus, because he's going to make you a forgiving person. You can understand what it means to be a patient person, a loving person, a kind person when you spend with Jesus. You can't help but be that way when you're spending time with him, and we have to allow those lifestyles in our lives. Families that get in the habit of serving Jesus create this atmosphere in them of serving others. I once had a man tell me, we're talking about, back in Indiana, talking about missions and mission fields. He said, Tim, if you ever want your children to go in the mission field, the best thing for them to see is you going in the mission field. Isn't that true? And Kathy and I, we purposed for ourselves when we were first having children, but I think maybe even before Jessica was born, that our children would be involved in our lifestyle of being involved in the church. We were there. She would go clean the church. She'd take the kids along. So our kids learned about cleaning the church. We go to Sunday school. Our kids go to Sunday school. We go to that. I'm telling you, parenting's more caught than taught. And so is the Christian way of life. It's more caught than taught. They have to see that modeled. And if we say, I had one family, I'm not going to say who it was or anything like that, but one family, several families actually, that the mother said, well, I take my children to Sunday school, then I go and have my coffee. And I said, so what are your children going to learn? They're going to learn from you that they have to go to church and you don't. And guess what happens when your children are old enough to make these decisions? They're not going to go to church. Because you're basically saying, as an adult, you don't have to go to church. It's caught. We have to get that in our minds. And so when you're talking to some of you, you don't have children at home or anything, but you have friends. You need to let them know that it is something that happens. It just doesn't happen by accident. Families that get in the habit of serving Jesus and serving together create this atmosphere of unselfishness and giving. And when members in the family learn that, there is joy. There is, you'll see them work together. You see them serve each other. You see this happiness. Zacchaeus, his household, evidently, I think, had this atmosphere. As I look at the text here. Zacchaeus, verse 8. It says, Zacchaeus stopped after Jesus had said, come on down. He stopped and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, half of possessions I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, which he knew he had, I will give back, not the same thing, I will give back 4 times as much. Zacchaeus right away told Jesus that he was concerned about other people. Something happened in his heart, because I'm going to tell you something. For a greedy person to do this, it takes a change of heart, doesn't it? It's somebody that is so used to collecting money, taking money, and doing that, to be as vicious as he was, is not used to giving it away. And he was more than willing to give it away. He said, in fact, I'll give him 4 times if I've done this to those people. And I believe, I'm reading between the lines. You might say it's Timology here, but I'm reading between the lines. I believe that from this point on, Zacchaeus was so changed that he was now a man of integrity, a man of character, a man who was honest in his dealings, and he was a changed life. Now, for Jesus, he knew that, but for the rest of the people, they had to prove it at tax time, right? Tax season comes around, we'll just see how Zacchaeus is. What makes a difference? Jesus. Jesus coming made all the difference, and his presence would continue in a home where this kind of honest, sincere response had been made with people. When you're not playing the game, when you're true about the whole thing, he knows that. He knows the heart. And new habits in life start when this happens. Now, on the other hand, you take a family that excludes Jesus. You take a family that excludes the church from its activities and things it does. That family can't expect Christ to have much of an impact at home, can it? Talk to people, share the Lord to people. Oh, yeah. I like God. I love God. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know Jesus. Yeah. I don't go to church. I don't do this. I don't do that. I don't do these things. Yeah, I'm good to go. How in the world can the Lord have an impact in somebody's life if he's not allowed in it? Can it? No. It can't have he can't have an impact if you don't allow him into the life. All or more, most of the interests of a families have run contrary to what the church is. Look at our world today. Look at what is going on. I'll tell you what. Show me your calendar. You show me your calendar, and I'll show you what's a priority in your life. Does that make sense? People tell me, I value this, I value that. Show me your checkbook, and I'll tell you what's a priority or value in your life, or where you spend your money. I mean, not that I want to see your checkbooks, okay? I'm just saying, you can tell. Money will tell you where your values are. Your calendar will do the same thing. It will. What you think is important enough to put on your calendar is important for here. You may think that's judgmental, but that's just how it is. What a family places in its schedule is what it decides is important. I was thinking the other day, which is really bad sometimes. I was driving down the road and I was thinking, what choice would most families make? What is the choice that most families would make if they had to choose between church and work? church and play. Church and school activities. Church and other activities. Here, this is going to step on some toes on this one. Church and hunting. Okay, church and fishing. Yeah, I got some. I wonder where our choices would be. Would most families say, I will choose the church over this or that? The absence of the Spirit of God in the home is usually because of the failure of family members to give Jesus the chance to even work in it. Got to give him the chance. In our story, we see that Zacchaeus made new habits. And because of that, it made it possible for Jesus to work in his life. So here's my question for you. Does Jesus feel at home in your house, or does he feel like a visitor? Does Jesus feel at home? When I say feel at home, it's coming home, sitting on the couch, go in the fridge, feel like you can go anywhere, do anything in the house. Whereas a visitor comes in and just waiting for somebody to attend to their needs. Waiting for somebody. Are we tracking here on this? That's the question. Does Jesus feel at home in your house? Or does he feel like a visitor? The second thing where Christ can help your family through the church is if your attitudes encourage it. Your attitude encourages it. I'm going to tell you this. Attitude equals altitude. You have the right attitude, you will go places. You have the wrong attitude, you will go places, and you don't want to go places, if you know what I mean. The other thing you have to understand about attitudes is attitudes are the roots of habits. Attitudes are the roots of habits, where habits begin. Attitudes can destroy Christ's effectiveness through his church for his family. You listen to a family, you listen to the children of a family for a while, and you'll soon find out what the attitude of that family is toward the church, toward other Christians. You listen for a while. A lot of families see the church as an enemy, and they become suspicious of it. They have the attitude that the family needs to protect itself against the church. Some negative attitudes come from the way families feel about money. Maybe you've seen this. Usually it's because families are more committed to the money and material things than anything else. And because of that, they say the church just wants my money. Ever heard that? Oh yeah, the church just wants my money. Well, if you ever think that, or you know anybody that thinks that, let me just be real clear about this. Keep your money. Or you tell them to keep their money. My Lord doesn't need it. My God can supply all my needs according to his riches and glory in Jesus Christ. At least that's what the Word tells me, and I'm just nuts about believing that. And I'm going to tell you something. Too many people get caught up with the love of money. And it's easy. Our culture is telling us we need this, we need that, we need this, we need that. The church doesn't need your money. God doesn't need your money. What God wants is your heart. What kind of giver does God like? Does God love? Cheerful, hilarious giver. One is, oh yeah, let's do it. That's what kind of giver God loves. God loves the cheerful giver, the Word tells us. So that when we give in the offering plate, it's all about the heart. That's what it's about. It's about the hearts. So when you have people say, the church wants my money, you tell them. You said, Pastor Tim said, we don't want your money. I told a multimillionaire one time I was witnessing to him. He told me that. I said, do me a favor. He said, what? I said, leave your checkbook home. I said, we don't want your money at our church. This is back in Indiana. We don't want your money. And back in my mind, I'm going, it wouldn't hurt. But we really didn't want his money because I wanted him to know Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ crucified, who rose from the dead, who came to heal him from all the things that money can't do for him. That's what I wanted for him. I'm getting off on a tangent here, I guess, maybe. Anyway, I'm going to tell you the other thing that we have to understand is sometimes families feel like the church has ulterior motives for them coming. That makes families have a bigger resistance to the influence of God, the influence of the church. When that happens, families usually tend to justify their criticism of the church as an excuse for not being part of it. Well, you know those people. You know what they did? Anybody ever hear things like that? You know, they are my aunt, my uncle, my grandparents, my parents. They make all sorts of excuses, things they don't even know about, so they don't have to be part of the church. You know, you got to understand that when the attitudes in a home promote personal animosities, when the attitude of a home promotes petty jealousies, promotes the lack of appreciation, these create in the children, if there's children in the home, a mindset that is hard for the church to overcome. It really is. You see generational things happen that they've been talking about these things for years and years and years, and it's hard for the church to overcome that because you just can't change your mind. And unless they let Jesus work in their heart and work in their mind, nothing else is going to change that. Nothing else will. There was an experiment once of a speaker who was introduced to two different audiences in different ways with the same speech. To the first audience, he was introduced as a criminal. After his speech, he was received with nothing warm about it. I mean, he was not received very well at all. He was received with harshness. To the second audience, he was introduced as a scientist. And he gave the same speech. And he was welcomed and received with clapping. He was welcomed and received with great reception, with all this good stuff. How the man was introduced determined the kind of reception he received. And in a similar way, how Jesus is introduced and how church is viewed in homes determines what kind of reception Jesus can be expected to receive from them. Does it make sense? How we go and introduce Jesus to people is going to determine. And if we go around saying, well, you know, it's tough being a Christian. Who wants that? Well, at church, we did this. Who wants any of that noise? But if we say, man, oh man, God is at work, and it's really cool seeing what he does in people's lives. And all of a sudden, people are going, really? Really? Oh, yeah, we have people who are changed. We have a young man that wants to give a sermon. We had somebody that shared about going to Guatemala there the other night. You should have seen that. And people go, really? What? I've had people say, oh, yeah, I'd like to see that. And we have to tell them about those things. I mean, let's be honest. I don't want to make it all flowery. We have our problems. At least I do. If you don't have your problems, then I want to see you walk on water. But, I mean, we all have our problems. It's just how it is, okay? And we are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, this church is absolutely perfect until you walk in the door. You know, it's just how it is. But you don't have to air your dirty laundry either. You know, I'm not trying to sell anybody a bill of goods. But the point for me is, I love this church. I love you people. And I really think the community needs to know that. They need to see that stuff. And they won't know it unless we tell them. Okay, let me move on. In a similar way, encouraging attitudes of people allow the church to help free families. The church is a place where we can teach families what's valuable, what's lasting. You know, you're not going to get those attitudes. You're not going to get those teachings anywhere else. Society is constantly teaching you something. And I'll guarantee you, society is not teaching you anything godly. Society is not teaching you anything eternal. It's in the church that you get the eternal values. It's in the church you get the godly values, the moral principles, and the things that you can take forever someplace else. Society won't teach you that. And if the only thing that is ever taught to a person is from our society and our culture, that is the only thing people will ever take, right? You can only go with what you've been taught. So we have to understand that the church is one of the few places where eternal things can be taught and learned. That's things that are everlasting. Only in the church are you going to hear that here, man cannot live by bread alone. You don't hear that in the world. The family is built when it takes part in the church's moral atmosphere and fellowship. It's just like plants. Some of you are probably doing gardens right now. You know that in order to grow a good garden, you have to have a good climate. You have to have good soil. You have to have good rain. You have to have good sunshine. You have to have a good climate and atmosphere for that. It's the same way in the church. If you want to grow good children, you want to grow good people, good followers of Jesus, you need a good climate. And you're not going to get that in the world. I can tell you what kind of soil that is. It is rocky. It is dry. It doesn't get any rain. It doesn't get any sunshine. It is no good soil. That's all there is to it. Christian families working together in a church fellowship encourage each other for significant personal and spiritual growth. Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpens iron. We come together to help each other out in this way. Children and young people need guidance. They need inspiration. Us older people, we need strength and we need determination. We need it from each other. I tell you, it does my soul so much good when I hear Mary Ellen tell stories of going to talk to people and doing some of the things she does. God, I love that lady. You know? The church is a place that is uniquely equipped to provide all of these things if the attitudes of families will allow themselves to participate in the church. Never before has there been a time when we've had more options, we're more open to more people than we have now out in the world. You have more options people have more options to work more. People have more options for moral choices, decisions you have to make. More options for value decisions that come at you in the boob tube. How many know that there's plenty of stuff that you're getting that you have to make these decisions? And never before have people had to have so much responsibility to make the wise choice with all the different and appealing. I'm going to tell you right now, the things that the world throws at you are appealing to the flesh. They are. We have so much out there through the internet, through TV, through movies, through newsprint, through magazines. The list can go on. And when it's given a chance, the church can provide a basis to help make good judgments where followers of Jesus can make godly decisions. I believe our young people especially need to be given standards to make wise and godly choices. We got some people back there that are going to go to college one day. And they're going to be on their own. We've had 3 daughters that did that. And they have to make decisions and choices where mom and dad aren't around. And the best place for them to learn those is in the church setting. I am just, Kathy and I are blessed. We are sometimes blessed beyond what we can handle. And at the risk of puffing up, I was just blessed by Kayla's response when she moved to Florida. She got in the church. First thing she did is got in the church. First couple of weeks were tough. She didn't know anybody, and things were slow and didn't have much work. Then she was introduced by somebody in the church to some other people, some young people. You know what she did? She started the Bible study. She didn't wait for somebody to say, would you like to be in a Bible study with us? I mean, no, she started the Bible study. Kayla, a month ago or so, I don't know, she said that she took and knocked off a night at work, waitressing, so she could start another Bible study. I mean, praise God for that type of thing. And you know what? God is blessing her. I had somebody just tell me yesterday, said, well, I keep track of Kayla on Facebook, and yeah, she looks like she's just really doing well. And I said, oh, yeah, she is really enjoying life. I'm going to tell you what, there is life to be enjoyed in Jesus Christ. But unless we change attitudes, you never get to that point. You never can. Zacchaeus was looking for a standard of life to help him make his choices. And when Jesus came into his home, Zacchaeus found the one that he could trust to give him whose judgment he could rely on. He said, yeah, this is the guy. This is the guy that will help me in my life. Thirdly, the church can help your family if your heart responds to Christ. Zacchaeus was looking for Jesus out of curiosity, but you know what? He stayed with Jesus out of interest. He was interested in him. Jesus spoke to the heart of Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus responded, not just with his heart, but with his home and his life. There's a lot of people who have never been taught to respond to Jesus. In fact, many people can't respond for one reason. Simply, they're so self-centered, nothing else matters. I know you guys don't know anybody self-centered, so you just have to work with me on this one. But you know, there's people out there, believe it or not, there's people out there that the world revolves around them. And so nothing else matters about anybody else, and their hearts are hard because of those things. Our culture teaches it. Our culture says, look out for number one. Our culture says, take care of yourself because no one else is going to. And the problem is the church has allowed that to be bought into. When this is the only lesson that's been learned, Jesus can't mean a whole lot to a person. Neither spiritual life nor even the spiritual growth of other people in a family is very important to somebody who's self-centered. And only when Jesus is allowed to touch the life, then he redeems the family. Then he does it. This is a true story. There once was a pastor who was approached by a man in the community asking the pastor to be the parole advisor for his son. The pastor didn't know this family, so he asked about their background, just to get to know them a little bit. And then after he found out that the teenage boy, this young boy, 20-year-old boy actually, had robbed a gas station. So the pastor asked the man, he said, well, what church do you attend? And without missing a beat, the guy was harsh and sharp. He looked at the pastor and he said, I have 240 acres of land to pay for, and I have never had much time for the church. The pastor did something that surprised me, and maybe you. The pastor said, then you taught your son to get what you wanted materially, and he just took the shortcut to get it. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? I think, I first heard about that and I thought, wow, that was pretty coarse. But you know what that pastor did? He told the man the truth. What did Jesus say about truth? Truth will set you free. And if a man is free, he is free indeed. I think we need to tell the world the truth. I think we need to be loving about it. But we need to tell the world the truth. This man wanted the church to undo for his son what he had spent the last 20 years teaching his son to do. Here, fix my mistake. He had kept Christ from touching his life. He had kept Christ from touching his family's life until now, and he needed the church. I can't tell you how often I got a call this the other day about somebody, I need the church. I need this. I need that. And don't get me wrong. I want to be the place where they come to. I want to be the place where they come to. So many times I've had couples come, individuals come with this problem, that dilemma, this or that. And honestly, it is so far gone. Sometimes I just shake my head and say, wow, if you would have been here 2 years ago, we could have taken care of this. If you would have, and there's those moments that when somebody comes to me, the prophet comes up, and you can look ahead and you can say, and I've told people, this is what will happen. And I hate being right sometimes. But you just know, you've experienced it way too much. If people would just allow God and the church to help, we want to do that. I want to do that. People, Christ calls us out of this little circles of selfishness and into relationships that are growing and flourishing in Him. When He comes into our home, He's calling us into relationships with other people. When Christ comes into your home, He changes our goals. He changes our values. He shakes us up and He turns us upside down. The world thinks you're nuts, but He puts you right side up into God's kingdom. How do you know that the natural cause, the natural way, the way we're supposed to be is Christians. The way we're not supposed to be is like the world. God created us to be like Him in His image, not in the world's image. So we're right and they're wrong. We're living right and they're not living right. Does that make any sense then? I know Pat's with me. We're tracking here, brother. But so often we don't think about that. And honestly, our flesh really gets in the way of some of that stuff. Jesus gave Zacchaeus a relationship with himself that totally changed Zacchaeus' life. One more story. There once was a treasurer. This is just a story. There once was a treasurer who was pretty surprised to find a check for $2,500 and a note from a new member of the church in the collection plate. This new Christian explained that the check was in gratitude for what the church had done to save his family. He said that he knew that if he hadn't been introduced to Christ, he would have probably lost his family and his house. He said the check was only a token of his gratitude for what Christ had meant to his life and his family. You see, here's one man who allowed the church to help his family by responding to Jesus. That's how it happens. You have to respond to Jesus. The church is Christ's redeeming fellowship for the family. So the question, can the church help your family? The answer is yes. It's yes. Christ will change your homes, but only when you're willing to pay the price of making a place for him at the table so you're accepted like Zacchaeus was. You need to make a place for Christ